Welcome back to Video Game Trivia. This time we're talking specifically about the mascots of famous companies. Last time we talked a little bit about Pac-Man's name, but this time we're going to talk about the actual origins and makings of the character. Pac-Man is probably the earliest example of a video game that was designed specifically to appeal to women. The design principle going that women liked cute, cartoony characters and eating. Pac-Man is also probably the first example that regardless of who the game was originally intended for, it can still be an awesome game in its own right, as everyone now considers it a classic. In addition, Pac-Man's shape was inspired by the creator's favorite food, a pizza pie. Even though Mario's been already the focus of one Video Game Stories episode, and I also talked about the origins of his name, there's a massive wealth of trivia in the Mario universe, so today I'm only going to focus on Mario's pants. Nintendo's lovable mascot, of course, is known for his red cap, red shirt, and blue denim pants. But in his original form in the video game Donkey Kong, Mario wore red pants and it was his shirt that was blue. His arm was colored differently from the rest of his body so that the player could see his arm moving around during the walk cycle. Mario's pants remained red all the way up to the first Super Mario Bros. Game. Funny enough, the official change in Mario's pants color can be narrowed down to a year, 1988. But the game is different depending on whether you lived in Japan or the rest of the world. And depending on that, the first time Mario wore blue pants was either in the Western version of Super Mario Bros. 2 or Super Mario Bros. 3. But regardless, it seems that Nintendo realized that it made more sense for Mario's pants to be blue rather than his shirt. The few notable exceptions where Mario's pants have still remained red include Dick Entertainment's Mario cartoons, which aired in the late 80s and early 90s, as well as the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie where Mario's overalls were mostly red. Next, let's talk about Sega. Before Sonic the Hedgehog came around, Sega already had a mascot, Alex Kidd. Sega tried desperately to make Alex Kidd as big of a platforming icon as Mario, releasing no less than 6 games in rapid succession between 1986 and 1990, but probably owing to the lack of popularity of the Master System and the fact that these games were marketed by frickin' Tonka, Alex Kidd simply never achieved the same kind of prominence as Mario, which is why in 1991 he was replaced by a completely new mascot created by the Sonic team. The funny thing about Sonic the Hedgehog, initially the designers of Sonic toyed around with the idea of him being any other animal, including a rabbit. The idea to turn him into a hedgehog finally materialized when it was decided that he should be able to roll up into a ball. Sonic's arch-nemesis, Robotnik, or Eggman, as everyone knows, was originally designed after the American President Theodore Roosevelt. However, a fact many people don't know is that he was intentionally designed out of very basic shapes to make him easier to draw for small children, perhaps proving the futility of the mid-90s mascot craze. In the video game industry, the Sony PlayStation line of consoles is probably the most successful mascotless line of consoles. During the very early years, a character called Polygon Man was introduced as the mascot for the console, but consequently dumped since this freaky creation probably made people less likely to buy a PlayStation. Those of us who grew up in the 90s, of course, tend to associate Crash Bandicoot as PlayStation's mascot, which is a rather erroneous assumption considering that 1, Sony does not actually even own the character, and 2, Crash has appeared in numerous different platforms. Originally, the character was owned by the studio Naughty Dog, and the character was later sold off to Vivendi Universal Interactive. However, in Japan, the PlayStations do have a mascot of a sort. If you found yourself wondering who the hell Toru Inui, who made his appearance in PlayStation All-Stars, was, Toro, also known as the Sony Cat, is the Japanese mascot for the PlayStation console. Now let's take a look at one of the most unquestionably iconic video game mascots of all time, Capcom's Blue Bomber, Mega Man. However, the character was originally going to be much different from his final form. For instance, the character's Japanese name, Rockman, was only formed after Keiji Inafune finally decided to go with the whole musical joke of rock and roll. Some of the early names included Rainbow Kid, because Mega Man could change colors depending on what master weapon he used, as well as the Mighty Kid. However, probably the most notable change made to the character was that originally Mega Man's main color was supposed to be red, but it was probably changed to blue because Capcom wanted the character to carry the company's official colors. Inafune was finally able to put his red Mega Man into the games in the sequels where Mega Man turns red when he uses the helpful items in Mega Man 2 and whenever he uses the rush items in later games. Inafune's affinity with the color red also showed when he was starting to design the first Mega Man X game. A lot of fans already know that Zero was originally supposed to be the main character of the series, but Capcom convinced Inafune to change the character to a different version of the classic Blue Bomber because they were afraid that fans would reject the new character. However, ever since, fans have of course noticed that Zero's role had become more and more prominent in the sequels. And when Inafune finally left the series after Mega Man X5, his next immediate project was of course Mega Man Zero on the handheld Nintendo systems, where, surprise surprise, you play as Zero. Now, by virtue of popularity, Mega Man has become the character most associated with Capcom, but Capcom did try to have another mascot besides the Blue Bomber. This happened in the form of Captain Commando, who appeared in certain Capcom products in order to congratulate people, his name obviously coming from the company's name. Captain Commando, however, did not appear in a video game until the early 90s when he was given his own arcade beat-em-up, which people have mostly forgotten, although the character keeps cropping up in various Capcom-related products. And finally, let's talk about one of the forgotten mascots of video games, Bonk the Caveman, who is commonly considered the mascot of NEC's TurboGrafx-16, also known as the PC Engine system, the system that fell to the wayside when the 16-bit console war between the Sega Mega Drive, also known as Genesis, and the Super Nintendo was in full swing. Now, although Bonk is widely considered to be the mascot of the TurboGrafx-16, he was never the official mascot. The closest thing to an official mascot for the system was Tony Turbo, a character who appeared in NEC's newsletters. Bonk the Caveman wasn't even owned by NEC, but in fact by the game studio Hudson Soft. And get this, Hudson was not even the company that created the character in the first place. Bonk originally appeared as the character PC Caveman in a Japanese newsletter for the PC Engine game system. The character became so popular though that Hudson decided to eventually make a game out of it. The thing that probably undermines Bonk's status as the TurboGrafx-16's official mascot is the fact that, like a lot of prominent TurboGrafx-16 titles, by the early 90s when the system had kind of fallen out of prominence, Bonk also made his jump to the competing systems with Super Bonk on the Super Nintendo. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for listening. I'm Hannu the Hande Mäkinen. See you on the next one.